Story, animation, creativity, character development. Long ago, the four elements lived in harmony. Then everything changed when the SJWs attacked. Only the greatest of all time, who could master all four elements, could stop them. But when the world needed it the most, they vanished. Look, we all know the memes, because it's hard to find a person who doesn't know what Avatar: The Last Airbender is. And it's no lie to say that this is one of the greatest cartoons ever created, or at the very least, one of the most beloved. Not only does Atla give both a great story and animation, it maintains that childish sense of joy and fun that a cartoon should have, while also maintaining a well-constructed and meaningful plot. And while I know that this isn't an anime, I'm still going to cover it. If you were expecting me to only cover anime, well, I plan on doing more of this non-anime stuff in the future. But for now, back to Avatar. Even giving this the full run-through as a college student, this show is hard to criticize, even in the slightest. It is the golden standard cartoons should be held to, where most of the recent entries in cartoons and animations have been slapstick humor at the expense of story and character development, or have just been adult world politics drizzled with a few elements that make it look like it's for kids. Avatar: The Last Airbender manages to produce a show that was funny, deep, compelling, and emotionally rewarding to watch. Now, we won't talk about that terrible adaptation by M. Night Shyamalan, because where the original cartoon is almost universally beloved, this live-action adaptation is universally despised for its failure to capture anything good about the original material. And as much as I'd love to tear that one apart, it's kind of like Rent a Girlfriend. Everyone tears that to shreds. Okay, so in case you live under a rock, Avatar: The Last Airbender is about a 112-year-old boy named Aang, who is a special being called the Avatar. In this world, some people possess the power of bending. Not like they have flexible joints, no, it allows you to manipulate and control the elements of water, earth, fire, and air. Long ago. Just kidding. Under normal circumstances, a person is only able to bend one element. However, the Avatar is special. He's the only person in the world capable of bending all four elements, and there can only ever be one Avatar at a time, as the previous one has to die and be reincarnated for the next to arise. While anxious over his new role as peacekeeper for the world, and the massive responsibility that comes with it, Aang flees the mountaintop home of his people, only to be caught in a storm and frozen in ice for 100 years. And he only awakens from that cryo-freeze-induced slumber after he's discovered by Sokka and Katara, members of the Southern Water Tribe. And Katara happens to be the last waterbender of her tribe, though more do exist in the Northern Tribe. Well, Sokka possesses no powers other than excellent comedic relief. So upon reawakening, Aang finds that he's been gone for over 100 years, and in that time, the Fire Nation had attacked, and that only the Avatar could stop them. I mean, it invaded large portions of the world. As a result of this conquest, Aang's people were wiped out, leaving him, you guessed it, the last airbender in the world. So now Aang is back to square one with the responsibility he initially tried to avoid, becoming the fully realized Avatar and restoring balance to the world in the wake of the Fire Nation's conquests. Narratively speaking, there's so much more here to dissect. There's hardly a character in this show who feels out of place or like they don't belong. Even the weakest of them, whom I would say would probably be Katara, is still someone with compelling backstory and a well-developed character. Even if her changes aren't that noticeable, especially compared to the likes of Zuko, she still slots into the story very well, being more than just a way for Aang to learn waterbending and actually contributing to the overall plot in a few ways. You have her desire for revenge against the Fire Nation that took her mother away from her, which later serves as part of Zuko's way of redeeming himself. And you have her encounter with the Bloodbender, who used her twisted arts to exact revenge upon uninvolved citizens of the Fire Nation. And her development from a overbearing girl of childish impatience and wonder to someone more mature and attentive over the course of the series is, again, very well written. One of the big things about Avatar: The Last Airbender is the fact that you can pick out any of the major characters and look at how they change and how they develop over the course of it all and not really find any flaws with it. Ultimately, The Last Airbender ends up being more of a character-driven story rather than an events-driven story, which generally tends to lead you to have a much better narrative. Take Aang, for example. His entire story is his twofold struggle to both accept his role as the keeper of balance and peace in the world, and with his personal creeds and beliefs. Aang is a pacifist, but is expected to be a warrior. He despises the idea of killing. He even goes so far as to be a vegetarian to avoid taking any life. Yet he's constantly challenged on that belief. Throughout the entirety of the show, he's confronted by those around him who believe that the only way forward in the face of the Fire Nation's aggressions is to kill Fire Lord Ozai. Aang is regularly told that the only option is to kill Ozai. His desperate search for a way out of this fate leads him to confront his former incarnations, who tell him variations of the same thing, that he must be ready to kill Ozai in order to save the world. Ultimately, though, Aang chooses to reject that path altogether, and as a result, finds a way to get past it. In stealing away Ozai's bending abilities, Aang is successful in neutralizing the Fire Lord in the final battle. And that resolution helps him to finally overcome his struggle to accept his role in the world. Again, Aang is a mere child when he learns of the titanic burden placed on his shoulders by being the chosen one. Aang wants to goof off and have fun, which is understandable considering he's still a 12-year-old boy. He'd much rather spend his time playing around with his pets and performing silly tricks, but he has a responsibility to the world. Aang genuinely struggles with the weight placed on his shoulder, and his immaturity shows through in several instances, like when he goes on a rampage when Appa is stolen away from him. Aang's shortcomings and imperfections stop him from being an overly perfect protagonist who's just good at everything. But it's not like he's entirely flawed either. Aang is an incredibly kind person and willing to help whenever possible. His very friendly and upbeat personality is a good match for his role in the story, as he struggles through his personal battle. But moving on from that, you can even go with Sokka, who manages to be both a driver for the more serious threads of the plot, while also being the greatest bit of comedic relief the show has to offer. In the beginning of the story, Sokka imagines himself to be a hardened warrior of the Southern Water Tribe, but in reality, he's still just some idiot kid who's only slightly older than Aang, and his skills really aren't all that impressive at first. This, of course, ends up making him the butt of quite a few jokes, as he gets whooped by a few different people. The thing is, they don't continue humiliating Sokka throughout the story, at least not to that extent. He does improve and become a proper warrior, especially after learning to use a sword from a master of the Fire Nation's sword style. And even though he undergoes this change, he still remains the great comedic relief he was at the very beginning. Ultimately though, none of the character arcs compare to that of Prince Zuko. He's a guy who's lost his position as heir to the throne of the Fire Nation due to his own arrogance. In order to reclaim his honor, he sets out to hunt the missing avatar that might spell doom for their empire. He's accompanied by his uncle, Iroh, who proves to be the greatest positive influence upon Zuko throughout the series. But if the hunt proves one thing to Zuko, it's that he's not at all in the same position he used to be in. Each step on his journey is plagued with doubt and strife, which continues to aggravate him as the pressure of trying to capture Aang mounts with every failed attempt. He continues to suffer because of it, ultimately choosing a new path as he finds his quest was meaningless, and especially because of the guidance he gets from his uncle Iroh throughout the course of the show. So for a time, he gives up and turns his back on his quest and tries to live quietly. But that doesn't go well, and he returns to his old ways very briefly before finally realizing that he wants to be a better person. From there, he sets out to join Aang and teach him firebending. Of course, that goes over about as well as trying to hug a porcupine, since literally every character knows the prince is nothing but bad news. Zuko has to earn the trust of the gang, and that comes hard after all the things he put them through up to this point. Still, hoping to change, he persists and earns their trust little by little, ultimately redeeming himself for his past actions and becoming a good friend to the group. Zuko's redemption is probably the best villain redemption story out there, and the emo-looking knucklehead totally deserves it by the end. With Uncle Iroh, the greatest father figure character you could ever create, this part of the story is another major draw to The Last Airbender. And of course, the story is only complemented by the great animation this series presents. It's a good show to watch no matter how you look at it. The fights are pretty spectacular, especially in comparison to a lot of the crap that gets put out these days. Fights actually look like proper fights, and the motion isn't clunky or overly mechanical, and it seems very natural. And not only that, but each set of powers has its own unique set of motions needed in order to use it, which generally simulates martial arts. So you have an element of uniqueness to the way everyone moves, rather than everyone having a similar fighting style. These fights are really quite nice to watch. And there's also one that happens to be one of the few instances where the villain decides to attack the hero before they can fully power up. The thing that you need to keep in mind is that Avatar The Last Airbender managed to make this show both funny and cool, maintaining a good bit of comic relief without sacrificing the actual tension or stakes of the plot. Most stuff nowadays prefers to make a mockery of the plot, if there even is one at all. It was refreshing to go back and watch this as an adult and get the full experience, and it was good. A kid's show that you can still enjoy as an adult is something else. It was seriously a great thing to watch, because there's a lot of things I would have missed when I was younger. I did not get the chance to watch this all the way through when it aired, and I'm glad I actually went back and got to enjoy it to the fullest extent. Either way, the combination of comedy, action, and story is perfect. A truly fantastic piece of animation and fiction. This is a 9.9 out of 10 kind of show. The overall work put into this makes it, like I said, a gold standard of cartoons. It's one that's so well rounded that it's hard to pass up. And if you haven't seen this show yet, it's time for you to look inward and begin asking yourself the big questions. Like, why haven't you watched this yet? Seriously, the only thing I could find to complain about this is the fact that there aren't more episodes to enjoy. But then again, I would rather it be a well-paced story than to see it try and drag the plot out and suffer because of it. So I am tossing that criticism aside. Anyway, that's about all out of me. Like, subscribe, comment, all that stuff, then go have a great day. Later.